Just looking at this crowd, it gives me hope, because we're all speaking up and raising our voices. And I want to thank each and every one of you. The reason I got into music was not because of my love for music. It was so that I could speak up for those people who don't have a voice. And today, I'm thankful that I can, as much as I possibly can. So I wanted to just sing a little bit of the song that I dedicated to those Afghan girls who have once again lost their freedom. دخترم دختر افغانم من دختر ملک دل ایرانم من مشکن بال و پرم را مشکن تاج سرم را مشکن از تو آزاد چو بدمن از تو آزاد چو بدمن عشق دارم چو منالای بلکن زده همه چو بلبل بچمن زینب و ناز و مهری به سخن زینب و ناز و مهری به سخن. A very quick speech. Thank you. The international community, under the leadership and for the support of the United States of America, went to Afghanistan to topple terrorist-sponsor government, and a collection of 46 nations stayed there to fight a terrorist organization called the Taliban. Finally, after 20 years of fighting, loss of thousands of precious lives, and spending thousands of billions of dollars of taxpayers' money, President Biden decided to accept the most shameful defeat in the history of the United States of America and leave Bagram Air Base under cover of the dark at night, and left a vast land to a bunch of religious zealots wearing slippers and riding Chinese motorbikes. From the very first days, everybody in Afghanistan knew that these terrorists were coming from Pakistan to fight Americans and their allies, as well as Afghan forces. But nobody wanted to name the culprit that supported the insurgency for political reasons. The most powerful democracy in the world, and the only superpower, lowered itself to the level to sit at the same table with a well-known terrorist organization that had millions of dollars of bounties on their leaders' heads not long ago. Not only the United States of America, but all their NATO allies together gave in to a bunch of religious zealots and accepted a humiliating defeat. The fate of 36 million Afghan men and women is given to the hands of a group of zealots who do not believe in human rights, freedom of speech, equality, rights of women, democracy, or progress. They want to push the society to 1400 years back. Terrorism is their way of forcing themselves on masses of people. They believe that masses are animals and do not know the right way of living, and only religious leaders or clergymen can decide for them how to live. They do not recognize any international organization and believe that science and technology misleads humanity. President Biden committed a crime against humanity by pulling US forces out of Afghanistan before reaching a meaningful political settlement. Terrorists, aka Islamic radicals, jihadists, Salafis, or Islamic fundamentalists make a strong network around the world and are the most serious threat for the security of mankind. The defeat of the Soviet Union emboldened and strengthened terrorist groups all around the world, from North Africa to the Far East. The defeat of the United States will provide every Islamic extremist with the belief that their ideologies come from God and it is the most righteous ideology. President Biden, by pulling out US troops from Afghanistan, not only accepted a humiliating defeat, but provided terrorists with a vast land that they will certainly try to expand. All terrorist groups such as the Taliban, ISIS, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Lashkar-e-Jangawi, Chechen terrorists, East Turkestan Islamist movement, Islamic movement of Uzbekistan, Al-Qaeda, etc., have the same ideology and support each other. Afghanistan will be the best territory for them to flourish. there are governments in the world that use terrorism as a means to reach their political goals. At present, Pakistan and Iran are the two states that have heavily invested in terrorism. Every soul in Afghanistan knows that the Taliban couldn't get to this level of power without financial, military, and political support from Pakistan. Pakistan Foreign Minister Mahmoud Qureshi is shamelessly jockeying through the capitals in the region to convince the leaders to recognize the Taliban government. Herewith, I'm calling on the United Nations not to give the seat of Afghanistan in the United Nations to a representative from the Taliban until they share power with all ethnic and religious groups in Afghanistan. 2, all member states of the United Nations should not recognize a Taliban regime until there is a broad-based government that includes all ethnic and religious minorities, including non-Muslims. 3, sanctions of all types should be imposed on the Taliban to force them to respect human rights of all people living in that country, respect women's rights as equal to that of men's, respect children's rights, and respect the rights of religious minorities, including non-Muslims. Number 4, all members of the United Nations should designate the Pakistani government as a terrorist sponsor state and impose political, economic, and military sanctions on Pakistan. 5, sanctions should be imposed on Pakistani politicians and military leaders who promote terrorism and support terrorist groups and use them against the neighboring countries for political gains. I also call on the Human Rights Commission to watch all actions of the Taliban against the Afghan civilians and report every misconduct to the United Nations to take proper action against them. And stop the Taliban from ultra-judiciary killings and inhuman punishments such as stoning, cutting hands and feet, and public executions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Muzhdah Jam. Sanction Pakistan! Sanction Pakistan!
In today's world, terrorism is the biggest threat to world security. There are many active armed terrorist groups from North Africa to Far East and even in the Western Hemisphere who not only disrupt the peaceful lives of the public but kill innocent people and destroy public properties and historical monuments constantly. And they do all this in the name of God. They are against human civilization, and the only thing they like and appreciate from science and technology is the killing machines and their support equipment. They have no respect for human life and freedom. Terrorist organizations want to take the world back to centuries ago without realizing that science and technology, and together with it, human civilization, has progressed so much that it's impossible to take it back centuries. The most unfortunate fact about terrorism is that it is made and run by the very governments that claim to be the promoters and defenders of democracy in the world. Yes, you heard me right. The intelligence organizations under the guidance of their governments in the most democratic countries radicalize the least educated and least privileged individuals and create these monstrous terrorist organizations and use them for their political gains. Another unfortunate fact about terrorist organizations is that despite being non-productive and extremely destructive, they have access to huge financial resources. The question is, where are these financial resources coming from? The answer is very obvious. These financial resources mainly come from the governments, and not only the totalitarian, but the governments that are democratically elected. They use taxpayers' money to promote terrorism and use taxpayers' money to fight the same terrorist groups that they themselves created. To be clear, majority of the governments in the world use terrorist organizations for political and economic gains. The Taliban is a terrorist organization by all definitions. Among all, the Pakistani government has invested the most on terrorism, and it is not hidden from anybody in today's world. The Pakistani government, that has been run mostly by the military from the time it came into existence in 1947, has created several terrorist groups to threaten its neighbors, India, Afghanistan, and Iran. The Taliban is the product of the Pakistani military that has been reorganized, trained, financed, and armed by the Pakistani military under the watchful eye of the United States and its NATO allies. They got to the point where the US, a superpower, shamefully left Bagram Air Base at night. The question is, why did the US and its NATO allies not pressure Pakistan to stop supporting the Taliban and other terrorist groups? The answer is clear. The Pakistani military created most terrorist groups within the financial and technical support from the same countries that were in Afghanistan under the banner of the war against terrorism. They not only did not pressure Pakistan, but they provided Pakistan with over $20 billion that they knew exactly where that money was going. After almost 20 years of war, the US government sat with a terrorist group for negotiations and signed a deal with it that legitimized the Taliban and promoted it as a political group, expecting a terrorist organization to respect the terms of the agreement they signed. Isn't that idiotic? Pakistan is a terrorist supporting state, and unless the international community takes serious steps to sanction the Pakistani government, nothing is going to change. Other terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS are fighting alongside the Taliban, and they will grow under the umbrella of the Taliban. The international community, by turning its back on Afghanistan, are providing a safe haven for terrorist organizations to grow stronger, and before you know it, the world won't be able to contain them. That's a reality. Before we know it, the Pakistani Taliban will topple the Pakistani government and get direct access to nuclear weapons. I want to say a special thank you to Congressman Michael Waltz, former Canadian Minister of Immigration Chris Alexander, and all the other political leaders and diplomats who are working tirelessly to do something about the situation in Afghanistan. They have been continuously working to get the Afghan people's message out, and the only political leaders who know what they're saying, what the catastrophic results would be if nothing is done, and who speak the truth and actually care deeply about what is happening in Afghanistan. I, for one, will never forget what they're doing for us. And I also want to mention that today in Herat, they had a meeting in the University of Herat with the Taliban, and the Taliban refused to speak to the women, the female professors. And the female.
Shame, 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 shame.
Thank you so much for your time.
Shame.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank
Say
you.
one more time. Zindabad Afghanistan. Hold it.
Welcome to the show. Go ahead and grab a seat. Any chair you see, it's been a gruesome couple weeks trying to fight for peace. As I look around in the streets, we marching all alone, but they the first ones to tweet. I get it though. It's about clout, not the cause. Jesus had 12 followers and still got crossed. No love lost. Let's take it back to the start and say where the heart. In 79, Russia invaded Afghanistan, trying to take over the people and occupy the land. Though we weren't equipped, we the last ones to quit, fighting till 89 until the Soviets split. Now hold up. Why is that relevant? Because the Pakistani closet is full of Afghan skeletons. And Muslims nowadays are focused more on what has gelatin instead of supporting. But I get it. It's blame on the president. Lack of evidence. As they see us bleed, we hear them read that we'll be heaven sent. It's a facade to dedicate yourself to God but not help the ones in front of you. Don't that seem odd? Anyways, in 94, the Taliban emerged. These are the bums, you know, the scum of the earth, the losers turning on the people, burning schools, hospitals, old-fashioned medieval barbarians, the definition of evil. From 96 to 01, we got help from no one. That's a bit to digest all in one night. Let's talk about this one flight that led to US invading Afghanistan overnight. Bush needed any reason to just do it like Nikes. What would you do if the camera's on and you get a Klondike? The pressure's on. If you in the cut, don't measure wrong. The two forces, you know they could never get along. So the Taliban left, but really they were just hiding. Pakistan welcomed them back to a private island, gave them a home knowing what they know about the lives that they took on the land that they stole. Woo. Hold up. Man, you know I'm down for the action. When it comes to Pakistan, make sure in front you add sanction. Okay. Sanction Pakistan! Sanction Pakistan! In 2021, Biden said troops will be withdrawn. That's when the Taliban respawned, and their response was pissing on any peace bond. Now with the peace gone, what else is even the left to speak on? The people getting anxious, get Pakistan sanctioned. That just means punished for their roles on all of our souls that the Taliban took under their control. This is the world's longest war, countless bodies, we can't keep score. I said this is the world's longest war, countless bodies, we can't keep score. I'm begging for change, but yet I see none. Don't wait for a hero, instead just be one. Couple more points before I get going.